Tonight, Israel formally declares war, promising Hamas will pay an unprecedented price. Retaliation to the surprise attack.
There are no words to describe such savagery.
With force and vengeance.
Israel now tries to justify yet another assault.
Loved ones taken hostage.
I want to ask of Hamas, don't hurt them.
Families ripped apart by militants and missile strikes. As the conflict threatens repercussions in the Middle East and beyond.
I do think intelligence is pretty clear that the Iranians are very actively engaged.
Plus, NASA's new galactic journey.
We are beginning to feel that excitement.
Unlocking secrets of the universe.
This is the metal core of what was going to be a planet.
Hidden in a rock of heavy metal.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo. Reporting tonight, Heather Wright.
Good evening. The deadliest and largest invasion of Israel in 50 years has led to a declaration of war after the unprecedented attack from Hamas militants. The escalating violence visible over Gaza tonight, with rockets lighting up the night sky. The death toll is rising and thousands have been injured. Israeli officials say more than 700 people have died, while 400 have been killed in the occupied territory, according to the health ministry in Gaza. We're learning that at least one Canadian is among the dead, while 2 others are missing. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver starts our coverage tonight, and a warning, some of the details might be disturbing.
For the second night, rockets burned through the sky as Israel vowed victory against Hamas. The country announcing today it's officially at war. This heinous act is an unforgivable sin, said Israel's president. We are in a war for our home and we will win. Israel is ramping up its military action in Gaza, where Hamas militants launched a surprise attack Saturday. Tanks have been sent to reinforce the Gaza-Israel border. And Israelis in towns bordering the Gaza Strip have been told to evacuate within 24 hours.
The unprecedented nature of our situation calls for an unprecedented response on Israel's behalf.
Israel says thousands of its citizens have either been killed or injured, and officials won't confirm how many civilians and soldiers were seized by Hamas. Yoni Asher's wife and 2 young children were among those abducted and taken hostage by Hamas.
I want to ask of Hamas, don't hurt them.
Hamas says its deadly actions are retaliation for what they call years of crimes against Palestinians by the Israeli government. It pledged the assault, which begun in Gaza, would spread to the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem. This Palestinian man living in Gaza is calling for calm. The war should stop, he says. I don't want to continue feeling this hard feeling. There are fears this bloody battle will escalate. Today, Iran-backed Hezbollah fired rockets at Israeli military sites in the disputed Golan Heights. Israel fired back and sent tanks to its border with Lebanon. Israel has warned this will be a long and difficult war. To help bolster its fight, military reservists from all over the world, Heather, have been called back to help.
All right, Annie Bergeron-Oliver for us tonight. Thanks, Annie. Officials say Hamas has fired more than 4,000 rockets at Israel, including 100 today at a small town in the south. These are some of those incoming rockets being intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome over the city of Ashkelon tonight, which is near the border with Gaza. And that is where we find CNN's Clarissa Ward.
Definitely have never seen anything like this. It's a very tense night here. We're just outside Ashkelon. The Iron Dome has been activated. There has just been a barrage of rockets coming in. There is military hardware pretty much everywhere you look. You can see behind me some armored personnel carriers. As we've been driving along the roads near the Gaza border, there have just been scores and scores of tanks, reservists, troops, all very much on the move and all very much on a state of high alert. We actually had to turn around at one point because we came near to an area where there was clearly a firefight going on, and This just underscores how real the danger is here. It's just not a question of rockets. It's also a question of Hamas fighters who are still inside Israel, who continue to be able to infiltrate, and the battles that Israeli forces are still waging to try to get rid of them altogether, seal up that border completely. We also saw a huge amount of building equipment being moved to try to repair the damage to the Erez border crossing. So certainly a lot of activity going on here tonight, and tensions very high, very, very, very few civilians out on the streets at all, but an awful lot of military activity.
And there is heartbreak and worry across Israel, Gaza, and the world tonight, with many families wondering if their loved one is dead, hospitalized, or taken hostage. Here's CTV's Jill Makishan on the rules of war being broken.
As concertgoers from around the world gathered for a music festival, Palestinian militants launched their attack. Dozens of people were taken hostage, and reports today 260 are dead. In this disturbing image, what appears to be bodies piled in a tent. On social media, unidentified hostages were paraded through Gaza in pickup trucks and cars. They are believed to be Israeli soldiers and civilians, including women and children. Among the hostages identified by friends and colleagues is Vivian Silver, a Canadian-Israeli peace activist originally from Winnipeg. She was reportedly taken as Hamas militants entered the community of P.E.I on Israel's border with Gaza. And a BC man, Ben Mizrahi, is reported missing. There are reports of several international captives from Brazil and Mexico. American and British authorities are also investigating claims. A former Canadian government hostage negotiator says the prisoners of war will become a sensitive and high-risk issue in this conflict going forward.
Because of the human element and the emotions that it brings to it, in terms of fear of torture, the fear of uncertainty, family engagement, and how they can be used and manipulated in the course of negotiation processes. So I think the hostage situation is one of the main concerns that we have right now.
There are 1,419 Canadians registered in the state of Israel, 492 Canadians in the occupied territories. A warning from Global Affairs Canada tonight to limit movements, remain cautious, and shelter in place until safe. In Gaza, funerals today for children killed in an Israeli airstrike. As the conflict escalates, aid groups are demanding both sides follow the rules of war.
We cannot stress this point enough. Civilians are not part of this fight.
The CIJA, an advocacy group representing Jewish federations across Canada, today urged the federal government to demand the release of Israeli hostages from Gaza, including Canadians. Heather.
Jill Makishan in Winnipeg. Thanks, Jill. In New York today, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations accused Hamas of war crimes as the Security Council met to discuss the escalating conflict that has innocent Israeli and Palestinian civilians caught in the crossfire. Here's CTV's Tony Grace.
Only hours after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned Hamas will pay an unprecedented price, Israel's call to the world rang out.
This is Israel's 9/11.
At a meeting of the UN Security Council.
What we are witnessing are war crimes, blatant, barbaric war crimes.
Where the Palestinian envoy denounced Israel's actions.
The messages about Israel's right to defend itself will be interpreted by Israel as license to kill.
The U.S. is already putting plans to support Israel into motion.
This is a massive terrorist attack that is gunning down Israeli civilians in their towns, in their homes.
Sending warplanes and sailors to the eastern Mediterranean. Prime Minister Trudeau spoke with Netanyahu today and said Canada unequivocally condemns Hamas's barbaric, brutal terror attacks and supports Israel's right to defend itself. He also called for the immediate release of hostages. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly spoke with counterparts in Israel, the Palestinian Authority, Jordan, and Egypt on how Canada can help restore calm.
We feel that Canada supports Israel, is standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel at this moment.
And as rallies in support of Israel take place, concerns also grow about the scope of the conflict. In Lebanon, Hezbollah leaders expressed support for Palestinians, while lawmakers in Iran shouted death to Israel. Canada's ambassador to the UN joining those who suspect Iran's involvement in the Hamas attack.
The technologies being used and all of the education that's been applied as to how to do this is coming out of Iran, that's very clear to me.
Bob Rae also insisted today that peace must still be the ultimate objective. At this point, Canada hasn't announced any specific plans to mobilize support for Israel. Heather.
All right, Tony Grace in Toronto tonight. Thanks, Tony. Let's bring in CTV News international security analyst Jean Meserve to break down the fallout for us. Jean, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israeli forces are moving into an offensive phase. What exactly does that mean, and what is it going to look like?
Well, of course, they're not previewing their battle plans, but we can predict that rockets and bombs will continue to fall on Gaza. People on the ground outside of Gaza say that Israel is amassing troops and also equipment in what appears to be preparation for some sort of ground incursion. That is really a fraught thing to consider for Israel for a couple of reasons. One, incredibly dense population there. It will require fighting door to door. There would probably be high casualties on both sides. Two, it could put hostages in greater jeopardy. And the third thing is that it could create a quagmire, something that would be difficult for Israel to extricate itself from.
Jean, there are multiple reports that Iran may have had a role in these attacks. If they were involved, how dramatically could that escalate things from here, from a response from Israel and its Western allies?
So let me say, first of all, it would not be any surprise to anyone if Iran was involved. They have provided funding and other sorts of support to Hamas over the years. And there are reports, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Iran was involved. U.S. officials have said at this point they do not have the concrete evidence. If they find concrete evidence of Iranian involvement, one can expect that Israel might strike Iran. Senior Israeli leaders have said they will do that. And if they do, we could then expect Iran to hit back and possibly pull in ground troops. Also, they would certainly greenlight Hezbollah that would come in from the north. So we would have a multi-front, much expanded war scenario.
All right, Jean Meserve, thank you for your insight tonight. The shocking attack in the Middle East has people here in Canada fearing for the lives of their loved ones. CTV's Sinjin Alexander has that part of the story.
I've never seen anything so brutal in my whole life happening to my friends. I have friends being held captive in Gaza. I have friends with families being held captive in Gaza.
Liron Kurzman is a UBC student getting her master's. She's been receiving updates through social media. Messages and videos too disturbing to show.
Friends that found out that their loved ones are kidnapped because they saw photos of them kidnapped and tortured and paraded like trophies on the main streets of Gaza. And they are using our children like trophies.
The actions that we've seen have crossed a red line.
Dr. Asif Yogev has lived in Vancouver for 11 years. He served in the Israeli army and says the country needs support. This is violence not witnessed in his generation.
Elderly being dragged across the border, babies being tossed aside on the ground, mothers and fathers being killed in front of their children's eyes.
On the other end of town, chanting on the ground and from the viaduct, a rally for Gaza and Palestine.
And every single Canadian politician who is out there saying that they reject the Palestinian resistance, but that Israeli war crimes are just fine. We're not with them, and they don't speak for us.
People are depressed. People are giving up. People believe that the world doesn't care.
Now, of course, the death toll is climbing on both sides, as more people are discovered missing, more being called up to fight. Yet there are no signs of peace.
We felt yesterday helpless. We were raised to stand by our people, and we will do so. And we have the same resolve even though we're half a world away. And that's where our emotions sit right now.
Sinjin Alexander, CTV News, Vancouver.
The death toll from 2 powerful earthquakes in Afghanistan has risen to more than 2,000, with another 1,000 injured. Villagers dug through rubble with shovels and their bare hands in desperate attempts to find survivors. Entire villages were flattened with bodies trapped under collapsed houses. A lack of food, shelter, and clean drinking water, raising fears of losing more lives. Coming up, a powerful storm hits the Maritimes.
In the end, we are all safe.
Atlantic Canada's close call. Plus, plans to get to an asteroid worth about $10 quadrillion. People in Atlantic Canada were spared serious damage this Thanksgiving weekend when post-tropical storm Philippe blew through. This was the scene this afternoon on P.E.I.'s Panmure Island, where remnants of Philippe brought high winds ashore. It follows a blustery and rainy night throughout the Maritimes. CTV's Hafsa Arif reports.
It was a blustery Saturday night in Halifax. Gusts of wind roared through the city, and trees swayed chaotically in response. As night fell, the winds picked up speed, with some areas of the province drenched by relentless rain, evidence of post-tropical storm Philippe moving through the region. The heavy winds in certain areas of the province affected power lines, leaving 5,000 people in the dark at the peak. Nova Scotia power crews remained ready for repairs.
Yeah, we had over 500 people in the field and hundreds more behind the scenes. Our emergency operations center was open as well, so a significant amount of people in here getting ready to respond to those outages if they did occur.
All of it leaving lots of folks especially thankful on this long weekend.
It seems to be that it was going to be super rainy, and for some reason, universe is letting us enjoy it. So I think that that's a way to give thanks and to appreciate that in the end, we are all safe.
It was a little windy, I got a little scared here and there, but it wasn't as bad as they said it would be. And now I can go out and walk around without having to see any trees on the ground. It's very calm.
But a different story for those with nowhere to call home. Getting through a storm in a tent is difficult.
2 tents now. One of them was supplied by the city, but that was also a private one that was brought in. So luckily we have city workers that will come in and help us in the end.
While the waters have settled in Halifax, the waves crashed along the shore of Dominion Beach in Cape Breton on this afternoon, where conditions deteriorated throughout the day. Remnants of a large, sprawling storm still affecting the region 24 hours later. Hafsa Arif, CTV News, Halifax.
Still ahead, giving thanks and giving back. The generous donations to those in need. Thanksgiving will look a little different this year for many Canadian families dealing with inflation, increasing grocery and housing costs. CTV's Alyssa Thibault explains.
For Vancouver's Union Gospel Mission, Thanksgiving is one of the busiest days of the year.
We will be having around 2,000 people come in and enjoy a Thanksgiving meal with us.
Volunteers have spent the weekend cooking and shopping, preparing for Monday's feast.
It's a good feeling to put something back into the community.
And the soaring cost of groceries means more families need help. UGM says there's been a recent increase in the need for emergency food hampers.
It used to be 1, 2, maybe 3 a week. We now do dozens of those food hampers per week.
The same trend is seen at food banks right across the country. The Greater Vancouver Food Bank has registered 1,900 new clients since July, with numbers increasing in all age groups.
Our grade schooler packs, so that's for 6 to 12-year-olds. We distribute those once a month. That's an age group we're really seeing expand. Parents who are skipping meals so that their children can eat.
Heads of Canada's biggest grocery chains have agreed to take action on food prices after the Prime Minister gave them until Thanksgiving to present a plan. But in an interview with CTV's Question Period, the industry minister said it will take time before prices actually fall.
What we asked them, let's be clear, we said you need to come back with plans by Thanksgiving, but the impact on stabilizing price in Canada, that's going to take over weeks and months because this is an ongoing process.
Thanksgiving is traditionally the start of giving season, and there are concerns donations could be impacted.
We know that things are going to continue to stay tough with how expensive housing is, the general cost of living, inflation.
Food Banks BC has launched a provincial fundraising campaign to support more than 100 locations across the province in the hopes no one has to go hungry. Alyssa Thibault, CTV News, Vancouver.
After the break, an impending mission, gearing up for a monumental trek to a metal rock. Scientists are psyched about NASA's newest spacecraft, Psyche. It's embarking this week on its first journey to a metal asteroid. The unique mission is hoping to gather clues on the origin and evolution of our solar system. Here's CTV's John Venevali-Rao.
Full power and liftoff.
Set to hitch a ride on a SpaceX rocket like this one, the mission will see a probe about the size of a golf cart head off on a 6-year journey, traveling some 3.5 billion kilometers to a rare metallic asteroid called Psyche, that from Earth appears as a mere dot in a telescope.
We are still working so hard to get to launch. The team is full on it. We are beginning to feel that excitement of what is ahead.
Excitement about the first ever visit to such an asteroid. Parked between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, it's just one of 9 known to be made mostly of metal, instead of the usual rock and ice, and by far the biggest of its kind.
I am so looking forward to seeing those first images. They are going to be spectacular when we finally get to see what this metal asteroid looks like up close.
More than 200 kilometers wide, or about the length of Prince Edward Island, astronomers believe Psyche is composed mostly of nickel iron. For fun, one scientist estimated its metals could be worth $10 quintillion, but NASA has no plans to mine it.
Psyche is not ever going to make us rich, even though it's made of metal. It's very, very far away.
Instead, astronomers are interested because this is thought to be the core of a failed planet.
Basically, this is the metal core of what was going to be a planet, and then for whatever reason, it didn't form. So instead of being inside a planet and unreachable, it's exposed and been sitting there in the deep freeze of space.
It could tell us more about what lies deep within planets like our own and how they formed in the early solar system. To get to the asteroid, the probe will deploy huge panels powering a solar electric propulsion system, slingshotting around Mars to help get to the asteroid belt.
At the lowest altitude, we're going to be down to a mere 40 miles off the surface of Psyche. Get some spectacular pictures, spectacular data.
The probe will spend 2 years studying Psyche, and scientists can't wait to get underway this next voyage of discovery. John Venevali-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
And that's it for us tonight. I'm Heather Wright for Sandy and all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.